Oh, he's back. We are live on Facebook, Jazz Cabbage Cafe. We don't even have an in-process conversation to get started with, and we don't even have Rick sitting there to chime in. So this is cold, but we'll.
He's being represented behind me. He's here.
There he is. Oh, he had to go take care of himself, his needs, put ahead of the start of the show. And of course, we're looking at Deb flaunting the ambiguously gay representation of Rick and myself.
Yeah, I can't get this monkey off my back.
It's still funny.
Here to stay. It's going to be funny for a long time. It's been funny for years already. It has not diminished in its funniness.
Well, I'm excited about today. We keep on talking about the same topics in some ways, but we've got some more to talk about when it comes to a couple of milestones and a couple of years and personal freedoms. And Normal put on a really good, that was orchestrated by Rick. Shelly's excited about it, obviously. Normal put on a really good show commemorating the 2 years of freedom with a lot of the old schoolers, a lot of the people who were directly involved in making it happen. And it was a really, really good discussion. It was a celebration, and it really did feel like a celebration. And we gave credit to as many people as we could think of. And it was cool. So I had a good time with that the other night. And we did it on this format right here.
And that was 4 hours too, by the way. I've downloaded that. I'm going to upload that once I tweak it a little bit to the YouTube channel that I have. That way it'll be available on the Michigan Normal Facebook page as well as on the Jazz Cabbage Facebook page. And thanks to Jamie for saving us on that one. We have a Michigan Normal Zoom account, but for whatever reason it would not allow us to broadcast live. And the live broadcast really was the important thing. We could have gotten people together just to talk about stuff, but we had over 30 people watching at one point and participating through chat. So
yeah, 180 comments. That was pretty active. Yeah,
it was a big.
I don't know what the deal is with Normal's account, but there have been a couple of points in my experience with this account that things have to be updated sometimes in order for them to continue to work. As they've made some changes with the app and stuff like that. So don't know if that's it, but that's been a thing anyway.
Certainly could be.
So the UN did in fact take one of the several recommendations from the World Health Organization and give some value to the idea of cannabis having medical efficacy. That's pretty cool. And the MORE Act did get the vote and did pass. And Michigan House Representatives. Some people are talking more and more about it causing a lot of pressure on the Senate to still take it up this year and pass, and that might have some implications with the race in Georgia. We talked about this on a special show, that we did here in Jazz Cabbage right after the passage, or that later on that night. But I don't see that. I don't see Mitch McConnell bringing it up, feeling compelled.
It's kind of It reminds me of when we got enough signatures and we turned it in and it passed, and the legislature has the option of bringing it up, and we're rumored the first week. Oh man,
well, it was seriously considered in that case.
And when Colin says bringing it up, he means bringing it up and totally gutting our program so that it wouldn't have any of the personal freedoms, no home cultivation, and any of the other things that we fought so hard for. We were really worried about that until the last day of the session, and that's really last day of session typically in Congress is only in one more week. I don't think there's enough time now to actually bring one of those things up in the Senate, get it passed, and flipped it over to the House, unless it's a pandemic relief bill. I mean, they're working.
Yeah, that's what I would like to see, Rick. Don't you? I want to see them concentrating on pandemic and stimulus and things like that right now. Sorry, this is what's super, super duper important right now.
$900 billion bill versus a $500 billion bill. There's a lot of difference between them. Go ahead, Jamie.
Yeah.
Well, that's why it wasn't voted on before the elections, because a lot of the moderate Democrats thought until there's something in place for the people as far as the stimulus package or the pandemic response, we shouldn't go there yet.
Yeah.
I don't believe that there's enough pressure on Mitch McConnell to try to save Georgia by way of legalizing cannabis federally. I think that's a leap for his thought process, even if there might even be some logic behind it. I don't think that he's going to be there for that one. So we'll have to see. But I don't think that's going to happen. So we're gonna have a couple of really good guests coming on today. One I've mentioned, one I have not, because second person I recently met and then realized she's uniquely qualified to have this discussion with us. So Peter Boehm, some people here may have met him. He's been in Michigan for a while. And he's been working with some really cool products based around utilizing whole plants, whole plant hemp extractions, for example, to come up with certain products for certain conditions. As he says, I want to find out more about that from him because that's an interesting one, and for general health and wellness, and for fitness. So he utilizes these things as part of nutrition and all types of stuff along these programs, and it's going to be interesting to find out more about that. And we're going to bring him in on the conversation too about the significance of the labels given to what may or may not be subspecies of cannabis, the indica and sativa, and take it from there. Today I had an opportunity to be in a meeting with a woman who moved here from North Arizona, has been in the industry in several states between hemp and cannabis, has a pharmacological background, and has done a lot of consulting and working with extractions and setting up labs, and is also currently the head of the science committee of the National Cannabis Industries Association. And when we get deeper into the conversation of indica sativa hybrid, they're going to weigh in on that from kind of those perspectives of having a lot of experience and knowledge with the whole plant and what they think that means ultimately. So I'm curious, and we'll ask others as they come on, given our general kind of what I would call ad populum about indica, sativa, and hybrids, indica being more relaxing, sativa being more uplifting, hybrid an attempt to kind of combine the qualities. Are people here able to use those as a guide and are satisfied?
Well, I'll tell you right off the bat that sativa and indica in the early days, when there was less hybridization, were more significant than they are right now. And when I learned about the plant, when I really started to learn about the plant, not just use it, because I used it for a long time before I started to learn about the plant. When I learned about the plant, I learned about sativa and indica, and then my personal experience told me that those guidelines were not always true. And then as I progressed in the cannabis industry through the distribution centers we had with Big Daddies and the journalistic endeavors that I did, I found other people that felt the same way too. So I think that indica and sativa in the early days of this industry were more demonstrative of a particular type. But now that things have been hybridized so much, any individual scenario that would have been clearly defined as indica, couch lock, or sativa energy cannabis kind of watered down now. I think those phrases are far overused. They're more described in marketing purposes and less in scientific or effect type purposes. And I think that's the way I feel about that. Jim Salame, let's go to you first, sir, with the cosmic background. Hybrid, sativa, indica. You've been in the industry for a while. You know what's going on.
I kind of do. The thing I think is it comes down to the terpenes and kind of how they affect you, and it's a mixture of all those things. I'm sure the different values of cannabinoids, different values of terpenes and flavonoids. You look at everything. I consider everything kind of an indica leaning hybrid or an indica leaning sativa. Very rarely are you going to find something that's dead sativa unless it's like a South African Durban poison that's going to be 100% sativa, apparently, they say, because it's a landrace strain. So you look at some of those that you can really say that they are sativas and indicas in case of Kush or like a South African Durban poison for sativa. But yeah, that's my take on it. And then it comes down to my mood. So I can smoke a sativa and I just want to relax and I'll get really relaxed. So it depends on my attention too when I'm going to smoke and how I'm feeling at the time.
But one of the things I'll say is oftentimes things get labeled as either Kush or even a Durban poison, as you mentioned, Jim, not necessarily characteristic of that particular pheno. And sometimes it's just done as a marketing thing. Debra Young, you know what I'm talking about. Sometimes in order to move cannabis, people will occasionally change it to a title that's a little bit more, consumer friendly. And when as a consumer, we're looking at the title to indicate to us what the content of that cannabis might be. It's really a deceptive practice. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I can't really add anything to what you guys said. This is exactly right. Everything is a hybrid now. I have, and really, you're talking about Coach Lock on a quote indica. I can produce Coach Lock on a sativa on my plants. You just watch the trichomes; they go amber, and you're going to be Coach Locky with it. So, really, everything's hybrid now. Names really don't mean a lot. And I've even seen some strains listed as indica at one venue and sativa at another, and it's the same strain. So, I kind of go by how the characteristics of the plant when I'm growing it, like Jim said, depending on my mood. I prefer what they would a more couch locky indica type of strain, but I know that a lot of the sativas, if I let them flower another week, are going to be real heavy duty like that too. So, it's everything's hybrid now. There is nothing that's not. I've got one strain that I think is the closest to a pure indica that I could grow, the purest I could grow, but it's still not a pure indica. I know that. I know the two strains that cross it. So it's a very different world than back in the day when you said, all you asked was, does it have a lot of sticks and seeds? I mean, that was the big question. So besides that, everything is hybrid now.
I think that's true. The further you step away from the landrace strains, the less indicative of the original characteristics you're going to get. And right now, I think we're in that tween time where we recognize that the terpenes and the phenotypes are, flavonoids. Those are the things that really matter. But actually getting a good readout on each and every one of them and assigning names to a particular spectrum of those, that's really something we haven't done yet. So in that tween time between recognizing we need more organization and getting it, Colin MacDougall, you had people come in when you were a bud tender all the time asking things like, give me some of this or give me some of that. Did people commonly use the term indica and sativa, or did you have to educate them on that?
No, yeah, like people, I say it would, most everyone has took in that marketing scheme of indica sativa, and they come in and hybrid and they're like, yeah, I want indica, or I want sativa, or I know that the sativa will be good and the indica just makes me fall asleep, or I can't have that sativa, it'll make my heart race. And I think it's like them like conditioning, like coaching themselves in their head, like in a way, like whatever they're gonna like get, if you tell them like, oh, it'll be good, for the most part it probably will be, regardless of if it's indica or sativa, unless somebody is like really focusing on a specific condition, and then they usually know what like type of terpenes or like that the like are making them have these types of effects. I guess they're not so strict on a lot of, some of them are pretty strict on that, and a lot of them I feel like they've only been told like sativa and indica, and underneath it all they know that it doesn't really matter, I think, and that's just etiquette or how to talk to somebody about cannabis in a way, more specifically. So I think that it's probably all just sativa or whatever, or all just a hybrid. But I know that I don't know, some people are pretty like just want cookies, or they just want whatever.
Yeah.
But that would be more strain specific than indica sativa, and especially if you get with somebody who's growing consistently the same thing, you know what you're getting. But yeah, I do know people who say, oh, I don't like that cookies, but I like this cookies, and it's the same cookies. So
right.
Yeah.
Growing in the same place. Shelly Smith, here's what I know is that oftentimes people are basing their current position on their past experience. If someone sold them cookies, for example, and sold them up on the fact that it was a very strong indica and they had a negative experience, they may forget cookies, but they'll probably remember strong indica and maybe steer away from that. I mean, you've been around for a little bit as far as trying cannabis. Have you found that specific strains of cannabis consistently affect you one way or another? Shelly?
Oh, you're talking to me. I thought you were talking to Debra.
Oh, I thought you were giving him a
Hey,
silent
Kelly.
treatment.
Staring at me like you said I've been around. Oh, you wicked man.
I just thought you were talking to Debra. I think this is probably new in the last couple of years, but I go strain by strain and try to write down really specific things because I look for things like if something makes me, lately it's been about being like happy and creative and having a good attitude, right? Not so much pain relief or needing to go to sleep because that's never been my thing, but like kind of uplifting, creative, something I can work and be clear-headed and have a really good attitude. That's kind of what I'm looking for. So when I find those, I try to write them down and remember them that way. And if something is kind of like, you know, a knockout, I think it's strain by strain. I don't take what, and plus I think it's body by body. Like even when someone asks me like, oh, is this going to be like this for me? It depends on how, you know, how you sleep and how a caffeine affects you and
So
you know what your metabolism is like and what your tolerance is like.
Yeah, when you're checking these out strain by strain, Shelly, do you pay attention to whether or not it's being called an indica or a sativa or a hybrid or anything like that, or you just check them out and see how you respond?
You know, I just check it out because you know what's interesting is technically on the farm I've been working on, hardly any of our sativas even made it. Like they just didn't make it through the frost. So pretty much everything we have is an indica, I guess, but they're definitely not, you know, 3 or 4 years ago, I would have thought, oh, that immediately means sleepy, but it totally does not. And I am just realizing I know so very little about, I have so much more to learn about the chemistry of the plant and how it affects individual bodies. And I think there's so much more research to be done about that because even as you age or what's in your system or what time of day you have something, what's already in your stomach, you know, whatever it is, all that matters too. So I always tell people, like, if you're just starting, just get a notebook and write down. You know, some people that I work with, they swear by like these CBD tincture pain medications that are really strong that we have. And they have really bad knee or a really bad neck or something. And they have these really strong CBD elixirs that totally help them. So I'd say keep a notebook, know your own body with any of that.
So that sounds good. Hey, I want to introduce everybody here to somebody who I just met today and thought would be a good person to have in on this conversation. We're being joined by Tiffany Coleman. Hello, Tiffany. And you can, you know, of course, describe a little bit more when I'm done, but Tiffany has an extensive background in the industry with hemp and cannabis in several states and has worked the science end of it quite extensively. And currently is I believe, heading up the science committee for the National Cannabis Industries Association. And we got into this conversation earlier. And I said, hey, it'd be perfect for the show today. So she joined us. Tiffany, tell us anything more about your background that we might need to know a little bit, and then we'll see where you are with this. Uh-oh. Looks like your audio's connected, but it's just not working. Uh-oh, still not working.
Now?
Yeah.
Must
Right, now, there's the science background that just came through for us right there.
Move the cigarette lighter off the microphone. Yes.
Yeah, put it closer to your mouth. It's omnidirectional. It only picks up so far away. So I started as a natural product organic chemist. And through many years of working in pharma, I brought myself over to cannabis. And I'm still really interested in the science behind how this works, how the cannabinoids are engaging with our ECS, how that works for each person.
And endocannabinoid system by ECS.
Yes, endocannabinoid system, and how, you know, our bodies naturally produce these. So sometimes I feel like, just from what the woman before me was saying, I believe Shelly, listen to your body. I follow my nose as much as possible because oftentimes the things that smell like something I want to smoke, those are things my body might actually be naturally knowing at once. Sort of how if your kid wants to eat ice cream and they're usually a good eater, just let them eat ice cream, right? Because they probably need whatever's in that. And I found that works well. And I'm working hard to do research to support that as well. It's an important.
I like that. I want to interject just really quickly. I was been involved for many years, including like bud tending directly for several years. And what you just described, I've seen many times over. Somebody is attracted to it by its overall appeal, the essence and everything. And oftentimes that's a good match for that person.
Well, it's also why prepackaged cannabis can sometimes not be as successful in a sales situation. Mm-hmm. The fewer sensory experiences you get with a particular thing, the less likely you are to purchase it. And also the lesser amount you're likely to spend on that particular thing because of the uncertainty factor. So
joined by Peter Boehm, and we'll get to you in a minute, Peter. But right now we're meeting Tiffany Coleman, who's the head of the science committee for the National Cannabis Industries Association.
No worries.
Yeah, and our work there is pretty great, I think. Most of our activities are taking research that's already happening and just making it more available to the public, which is great. And beyond that, it's really trying to find people and connect them to each other. So, today I'm meeting you guys, and perhaps somebody will say, hey, I need somebody who has more information about, how different odors are impacting our, our nervous system and what kind of hormones are created. And lo and behold, I will have just met someone from Berkeley that is doing that project, and now you guys can work together. That's really what I think being at the national level is all about, is making these connections. And that's kind of what I do now. So it's good stuff.
That's excellent. I'm glad you're able to come on and share that with us and be part of this conversation. And Peter Boehm works with, there's a few different companies that you kind of work with your,
right.
Health Elevate.
Yeah. That's my web presence. Have a distribution company as well. Part of Phytotech Holdings. We have an overarching organization that has multiple divisions. We're intent on launching the first national health, wellness, fitness, and dosing app for the cannabis industry as well, or loyalty app actually. And so, I've been doing this for about 5 years here in Michigan.
Yeah, and I thought that, after speaking with Tiffany today, that she might have an interest in a lot of the work that you're doing, and kind of vice versa, given this discussion. We started off by asking everybody here what they thought about the values given to the labels of indica, sativa, hybrid. And I know that's not the deeper end of the discussion for some people anyway. And I just wanted to get just quick feedback, like, how do you view those labels, and how valuable are they when making a consideration?
Well, I'm going to echo some of the sentiments I've heard from others as well. I think they're too generalized, more marketing speak than specific. I think, as an industry, we have to get more granular. Understanding, really we have more of a responsibility, I think, to educate consumers about things like terpenes, so people can draw that associative relationship between, various strains that have certain terpene profiles and the effect that they have on that particular individual. So, I find it somewhat humorous that, some of these creative names that people come up with strains. I certainly don't have that level of creativity, but I really want to look at it from more of a hydrocarbon or molecular standpoint to better understand the terpene compounds, right? So
ultimately, you can see what's inside the plant. That's better information for somebody making a judgment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. So I don't really work with the raw material itself, right? So it's really a lot of reverse engineering. I also own a terpene company. We source directly overseas from companies that provide essential oils to some of the larger distributors in the US. And so we get those terpenes, and we do various formulations that are ailment specific based on differing ratios, where we combine the cannabinoids and the terpenes and so on and so forth. And I think our ultimate objective here is to replicate the McDonald's effect. And what I mean by that is that when you buy, for example, a cheeseburger in Portland, Maine, or in Portland, Oregon, the experience is going to be the same. The problem that I found, not only in flower, obviously, like, for example, if I like a particular strain in California and I go to Maine and I get it, or I go to Michigan or wherever I go, I very rarely have a similar experience, right? Because of all the environmental, all the various factors that we encounter, in the
and whether or not it's even labeled correctly in the first place.
Yeah, well, exactly. We can just make it up. Well, it looks like Blue Dream, right? Whatever it is. And so, for us, what I want to be able to do is be able to get at a more granular level where we isolate cannabinoids, we put them together in various ratios, we combine terpenes, we put them together in various ratios, so that regardless of whether you, and mind you, we're national in scope. So regardless of whether you buy our product, in January or July or December or in, California, Michigan, Alaska, Hawaii, Florida, you can have the same experience. And that's essential. That's imperative. I think to legitimize this industry, and mind you, I'm looking at it from a medicinal perspective, but to truly legitimize us, on a national or even global scale, we have to have that level of consistency across the spectrum. And that's something it's a glaring weakness today.
Right. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And I don't know if it's just me, maybe other people could chime in. It could be the microdosing of mushrooms I've been doing lately, but there's like this psychedelic little
oh, good. It's not just me. I'm so thankful. Okay.
No.
I'm kind of jealous, honestly.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. Colin and Jim, I'm sure have cued right in on that. By the way, Tiffany, Colin, and Jim,
better living through peyote. So
right, and if and whether Peter knows or not, but both Colin and Jim are very heavily involved in the decriminalized nature movement here in Michigan,
right.
And the city of Ann Arbor recently to get them to allow or make lowest level enforcement priority or essentially decriminalize entheogenic plants.
Yeah, I see.
Working on other cities now.
Flips. I don't know what that is. Sorry.
Well, it's kind of cool, I guess. We just needed to point it out and also just make sure that everybody was seeing the same thing.
I'm streaming Jimi Hendrix in the background, so that might have something to do with it. I'm not sure.
You are occasionally flashing with a 3D psychedelic image over your screen.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
So like just
amazing.
And to clarify a little bit more on this, go ahead, Peter. I'm sorry if you're gonna.
No, I was just gonna say you can send your checks and money orders to my foundation.
Oh yeah.
So there you go. Yeah, well, happy to.
So, and Tiffany too, if you have something to say about this, when we talk about making those products, consistent, that doesn't mean like necessarily that you develop a product and you say, okay, hey, this one's going to be good for people who have arthritis or something like that. The point is to make it consistent so that those who get used to it, for those who determine that it works for them, they can rely on that the next time.
Yes, definitely. I think sometimes even if it's, it's flower and you're talking about a person who's going back to a similar strain, if this growing method is so different that the strain itself is going to be more potent or less potent, or will have a completely different terpene profile, even if it's from the same mom, right? I mean, we know that winter versus summer, especially outdoor grows or, pseudo outdoor greenhouse grows have these issues. The person's going to have a physically different experience. And that may be a really negative thing for them. If they're looking for, I'm going to smoke the tiniest little teener ever. And they do that every other day and it works for them. And then they get a twice as potent randomly. And their whole life just got turned upside down, right? And it's, giving the consumer that consistency as much as possible, especially for people who don't want to be high, but need a medicinal benefit so that they can live their life that they're getting from the plant. Because if they are high, that may make it so they can't take care of their kids or, drive to work or, teach a class, whatever it has to be.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Peter, I'll get your thoughts too in a second, but, just to get nitpicky a little bit, using the word potency becomes a little bit in need of explaining usage almost, because I think that, we get a little misguided with thinking about the THC levels and stuff like that too, and how much importance we put on that. In fact, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, we did a show on that. And it would have been a Medical Mondays last night. We made the distinction of made sure that the others having the discussion made the distinction between ensemble and entourage effect based on Dr. Grinspoon's, who recently passed this year's observation. So it's more of an ensemble than you would call an entourage. They all work together as opposed to the supporting cast following the leader.
So wait a minute, Dr. Grinspoon was a grower that died this year?
No, Dr. Grinspoon was a Harvard professor, and he was a cannabis professional, and he expressed that when we use the term entourage effect, that implies one single with a bunch of followers, which in the traditional sense was THC, and then we considered all the other cannabinoids as lesser. But in an ensemble situation, THC is just one of many cannabinoids, all of which have equal importance. Therefore, he stressed the use of the ensemble term instead of entourage.
Yeah, and those things work synergistically, and then they combine with the individual's unique system, and we determine effect for that situation. But Peter, any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've always referred to it as the entourage effect, but really it is about that symbiotic, harmonious relationship between all the cannabinoids, right, in varying ratios. And again, it breaks it down to, yeah, again, the ratios that we're looking at, whether it be CBD, THC, CBC, CBN, and so forth. So these are all, as we formulate, for example, our ailment-specific formulas, we not only look at things like the cannabinoids or the terpenes, but for example, we even do varying ratios of the carrier oils. In other words, we want to be able to emulate or simulate, time release, for example, based on our body's absorption rates. So, and again, I'm looking at it purely from a medicinal standpoint. My target audience are typically females over 35 and baby boomers. So I'm trying to really go after those fence sitters out there who are curious but need to be empowered with information to make the right decision for them.
Yeah, let us know what's a couple of your products and what's in them in the process, and that kind of stuff.
Well, I mean, so there's really 3 levels of products that we have. We have an entry-level product, and this goes to my general frustration with the industry in itself. I mean, when I first got into this industry, after 10 years of big box retail, I ran a quarter of Office Depot, was a co-founder of one of the first cloud companies, so 20 years in the internet world as well. But my yearbook photo in high school should have been a bong. That said, getting into this industry, when I first got in, it was, I think, like a liter, for example, of CBD oil or even the isolate was like $50,000, right? And now, we can get that for a fraction. I mean, in some cases, less than $1,000, but the market hasn't moved. And so the thing that's frustrating for me, coming back to Michigan, because this is where I grew up, a lot of people look to cannabis as a last resort. In other words, they fell through the cracks of the healthcare system, or they can't afford traditional healthcare. And yet we're still, for lack of a better term, and I don't want to be offensive to anyone, but gouging consumers with the cost of a lot of these products. I mean, when I see people selling I'll give you an example, a $1,500 milligram extract, selling for, $150. It's nonsensical to me because my cost of production is less than $3. So, so what we do is we have an entry-level product where we take a particular blend of carrier oils to help emulate or simulate that time release. And then we add varying ratios of the cannabinoids, whether it be CBD, primarily CBD, CBG, and CBC. And then we have, that's called Synergy. So Synergy
right.
Essentials.
I remember I've sold Synergy to a lot of people, and they really liked the effects that it was having. I was like, what is the name of this stuff that he's talking about? And then you said it.
Well, I have to admit, Colin, that our marketing is a notch above sucks, and that's probably insulting everybody whose marketing sucks out there because we're horrible. But yeah, I mean, and then we also have H3O, which has gained a little bit of prominence, in Michigan, which is the ratios, the 2-to-1 and 1-to-1 ratios between THC and CBD. So again, there's a lot of thought that goes into this in terms of, the effect and how, people respond to these various formulations. The next, I take the traditional marketing of good, better, best. So, the Synergy Essentials is our entry level, and then our next is Synergy 2, because, I have a 4th grade education. And Synergy 2 is where we do combine, the various, terpenes and various cannabinoids, to, again, help, whether it be like we have an elevate. So we're looking at things like, for example, nootropics. We have a balance, which we can't market it, obviously, but it helps promote homeostasis in one's body, again, through terpene and cannabinoid ratios. We have a relief formula, obviously, for pain relief. We have a calm for anxiety. And then we have a pain relief formula as well. The thing I'm really excited about, however, is this new product that we'll have launching, I think probably here in first quarter now at this point, but it's codenamed Trident. But what we're doing is we're actually taking botanical extracts from various herbs, not necessarily cannabis or hemp related, but things like wild Oregon root, we're taking ginger, when we're actually combining that into the carrier oil, because
turmeric.
I'm sorry?
Turmeric.
Turmeric, yeah, exactly. Yeah, although the flavor profile is horrific, right? But and again, we have labs that we work with overseas as well to do that. But the answer is that, when I look at, for example, a tincture, and you say, well, gosh, 85% of that is just basically a base oil. And don't get me wrong, things like MCT are fine, and grapeseed oil. And again, we're even working with squalane, which is a derivative either from shark or from olive oil, which is the most absorbing oil known to man. But you look at that and you say, gosh, these are pretty much inert ingredients. So what we're doing now is we're taking these botanical extracts through cold processing actually, with a lab in California that a dear friend of mine owns. And we're doing it without heat. So we're not disrupting the actual cannabinoidal profile of these various plants. And we're adding these essential oils into the carrier oils to help maximize the efficacy of the formulations that we've developed. So it's a combination of the terpenes, the flavonoids, and then these infused carrier oils to help maximize that effectiveness, which is why we call it Trident. So, but yeah, I mean, like right now, for example, I have on promotion I don't know if I can talk about price at all or not. And if I it's okay. Okay, I have a 3,000 milligram extract for $39.99, and I'm making money on it. But the reason why I'm doing that is I want to get out there and I want to reach those fence sitters. Because if you look at the naturopathic and homeopathic industries as an aggregate, they're growing by leaps and bounds, right? And we're looking to emulate, as an industry, I think the cannabis industry, we view ourselves as a little bit too unique, and we're missing out on some really valuable lessons we can learn from other industries in terms of our go-to-market strategies. So there's price line theory, actionable price points that people respond to. In other words, if I'm CBD curious or THC curious, am I willing to spend $100 to see how it helps me? Probably not for most people. But if I can get down to a price point where it allows me to separate that $20 bill from my wallet, that's what we want to. We want to create an elegant, informative experience for consumers where they can, get into the early stage, and then we can graduate them to various products that can hone in more specifically on the ailments and conditions they're looking to treat.
Yeah.
Have the quality product at an affordable price so that
consumer
can benefit.
It shouldn't cost an arm and a leg to feel better naturally, right? I mean, the thing that pisses me off, is that when I go to the pharmaceutical, I have a particular medical condition. Even with insurance, my one prescription costs $400 a month. Now, with these challenging economic times that we're facing, again, it's lunacy to me that as an industry, as an aggregate, we're just, in a lot of cases, from my own personal observation, overcharging consumers. And it's important, I think, we have a fiduciary responsibility to help people feel better naturally and give them something that's not going to tax them and radically alter their lifestyle.
But that, I think, was a predictable result of the evolution from the medical cannabis industry to the adult use cannabis industry. Oftentimes in the medical cannabis industry, people who had the best of intentions and the purest of hearts got into it. Maybe they were not the best business persons, but they were certainly the ones that had compassion and showed it. But once bean counters take over, then compassion sometimes takes a back seat to profitability, especially when you have a board of directors and a group of stockholders that are demanding.
Well, yeah, and we've had this conversation many times, especially when they're looking at cannabis as if it were a widget and they've got no understanding of the nature of the plant or the culture that surrounds it or all the things that you want to know when making a decision.
The difference.
That's a core statement, though, Jamie. I mean, that is about corporate culture, right? I mean, it really is what it boils down to. What is your mission statement? And are you able to adhere to it? And yeah, we all run the risk of becoming this big monolithic corporation where, to your point, was the bean counters actually control the market, and that's not where, at least from our perspective, that's not where we're going. The other thing is too, when you look at things like taxation, it's curious to me here in Michigan and other states as well, we charge these excise taxes and then we pass that excise tax on to the consumer. So if you have consumers who are struggling and are looking at cannabis, in a lot of instances as a last resort, why don't we look at people who are selling into the industry? In other words, are those lights, ideally suited for, indoor environment? Is that battery, the lithium battery, is that designed not to explode at a certain temperature? Are you inhaling metals? Is that packaging designed for transport in the trunk of a vehicle in July in Arizona? And in other words, tax those people make sure that their product has the quality standards that are safe for consumers to use, and charge them and lessen the burden on the consumers ultimately buying the product. And again, I'm very myopic in my perspective. I'm looking at it purely from a medicinal perspective.
I think it seemed to me like Tiffany picked up on some of what you were saying. She just came here from working in Northern Arizona. When you brought that up specifically, I saw her connect with that.
Yeah. Well,
yes, for sure. I don't know how your things are handled up here where it's cold, but vapes don't work the same way here as they do in Arizona, and packaging doesn't work the same way. And all the regulations are completely different, and we could be dialing it in to make sure it's safe for the patient instead of using it only as a tool to beat people up, right?
We need to develop packaging for every season here then.
Yeah, four seasons packaging.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But the other thing too is that, less, like, in other words, if you have a dispensary and you're participating from vendors that have been approved, that have been shown to have products that are safe and effective, give them a break on those excise taxes and then pass that on to the consumer.
Just to interject on that conversation, and many people are concerned about it, and we brought this up before too, there's going to be the loss of what we're calling our medical program right now. That's either going to fizzle out because it's not competitive with the other program, or there'll be a legislative move to combine, these licenses. And either way, for example, I'm with the Botanical company. We are going to go out of our way to make it known that we still are prepared and are concerned about somebody who's interested in coming and learning about cannabis from a health and wellness perspective, or for a condition that they have, or what have you. And no matter what, we think it's good business to do that. And that's, what got all this started. And there's a lot of people who need that type of service, and it might get lost when there's no actual medical program to point to in some cases, as we were talking about. And those places rely on trying to figure out ways to maximize profits over providing those services in the future. But we're going to continue to have that as a focus within our organization. And if those are combined and there's no removal of the excise tax for patients, we'll take it out ourselves, similar to what we do for seniors or veterans and that type of thing. And the patients will get the 10% break also to eliminate that.
Yeah, that's the biggest. Sorry to interrupt. That's the biggest challenge that we have. I mean, I think about 65-year-old grandmothers, right, going to a gas station to buy CBD. It's at this point in time, it's a commodity, right? And the thing that while depending on its use and application, I'm not pro, for example, gummies. We have so many people who are pawning off CBD infused gummies that have tons of sugar in them, and we know that sugar is a key inflammatory, and we know that inflammation is the root cause of 90% of the pain we experience in our bodies. So you really have a zero-sum effect. So I think as an industry, we have to take it upon ourselves, because frankly, the legislators won't be able to do it for us. But we have a responsibility to educate the consumers with the right information, to empower them to make the best purchasing decision that's going to help them, because all that lends itself to is creating a loyal customer, loyal to a brand, loyal to the company, so on and so forth, right?
We're saying that, and I can appreciate where that's a value to a certain percentage of consumers. But what we're seeing is that there's 1.5 million Michigan consumers who are used to utilizing the unregulated market, where they really have been totally satisfied with their consuming experience without any guidance. So we're recruiting people into the system, and we're trying to provide them with guidance, but the majority of people using cannabis are probably not going to seek that out. The question becomes, how do we...
The qualifiers today, though. In other words, we have to think about all those fence sitters, right? I mean, if you look at the evolving market, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. I apologize. Go ahead.
No, you go right ahead. It's my show. People interrupt me all the time.
I've been married twice. Trust me. I don't get an opportunity to speak very often.
Jamie's on mute. That's extra funny for me, actually.
And everybody's lucky that it was.
No, I mean, and again, I think about, my father, for example, growing up, my father was, conservative, right wing, marijuana, devil's lettuce. Now he's my biggest advocate. He loves CBD. We have a product called Rapha. We're emulating and replicating, cannabis that was referred to in the Bible. It's basically olive oil with cassia root and so on and so forth. And, the reality of the situation is that we have a lot of folks out there who are curious, who want to try it, who hear all these great things, and they're right now, the only avenue they have available to them is that buddy of theirs who might know somebody who might say something, right? And that's not necessarily the right manner in which to go about providing the necessary and essential information for these people to make that purchasing decision. So I'm not debating anything you're saying, Rick.
No, it's interesting because like, I don't want to say we've evolved past that thought, but a lot of us, we've been there and now have kind of evolved past that, to a degree. And you have to kind of remember, for me, have to kind of remember it again, that there are people that are these different levels of understanding of what's going on here. And you brought up that the biblical recipe with the olive oil. We had an activist in Michigan, and he still creates the product, which is an olive oil based topical with many things in it. A Native American root, bear root, maybe.
Yeah, sure.
So, and back then, now we have many things to point to and a lot of, history and different products and experiences. Back then, we didn't have a lot to point to for things that were using cannabis in much different ways than the eating a brownie or smoking a joint.
Right.
And we were able to utilize that as what you're talking about, kind of with your, bigger picture with your product line now.
Yeah.
Hey, I got to just say, Peter, it's great to see you, Tiffany, and it's great to talk to you. I love what you guys are doing in the science part of it, keeping that alive. And Peter, I remember the great days back at home, coming in and talking to you about some great things, and just as this whole industry and this whole thing is unfolded. And I'm so glad that you guys are still sticking with the science and keeping the light on that, because it's true. The recreation came in and everyone's focus kind of went to that, and we're forgetting some of the most important things. I'm sure that people don't know that CBD is an inoculator to the THC psychoactive effects.
Right.
And that's something that if we keep educating people on the diversity of this plant and all the different things it can do, and all the different forms, like a suppository doesn't give you the psychoactivity like it would if you consumed it, by mouth. And things like that I recall back in the days of really helping and educate people, really like made it exciting and put the light on what this plant's capabilities really truly are. So kudos to you guys. I'm so glad to see you too, Pete.
Thank you.
I was also going to mention, like, people like to come like from miles and miles away to like a dispensary, and it'll be their first time. They'll come from like other states, and maybe I remember like for the longest time we couldn't sell recreational marijuana, and they could buy CBD, and you could ask them like about their ailments, and they'd like come back several weeks later to get whatever the synergy products, because I remember those ones were really easy to talk to people about, especially if they didn't want to go in the back or they couldn't. So yeah, kudos to you and those products. They were great for many people.
Tiffany, for a little bit more perspective, Jim was with an organization called the Boehm of Medicine in Ann Arbor, which highly regarded as like the standard, let's say, for a place. And then Colin worked at a place called Bloom, which was kind of right there, the two like very high standard, long-term operating places in Michigan. That's why they were destination locations for people, as he's describing.
Tourists even would come all the way just to visit you. That's
and the depiction behind Deb is cartoon caricatures of Rick and myself, because people have not always liked us over the years, and that was designed to give us some shit in some way, I guess. But.
It's good. It's good. I really liked what Peter was talking about access. For me, my family is a family of, American medical refugees. We were in a state that was prohibited. I moved my family so we could have better access. I think there are plenty of people, millions of people who have done that. And, the price point, I think, is, as we get more legalized states, it's still limiting access. If grandma is living on a fixed income and she has $11 a month to spend, she does not have access to our industry. And doing whatever we can to keep companies afloat in such a way that we can still give her access by driving the price down. is probably the best for her. And she's a patient too. And there are plenty of people who have a little bit more disposable income, but maybe not that much, maybe $20 a month, and, you know, making a product that will work for them as well. And really looking at that it can, you know, if you're in, say, San Diego and you're buying, you know, an $18 gram because reasons, you know, and or you go to Colorado and you buy that same gram, maybe very close to the same gram for $3, right? I mean, access is important. I think there's a reason some of the markets are looking in a more robust way. And it sounds like what Peter's doing is really trying to drive that access. And I cannot express my appreciation enough for the people who are making sure that everyone has the ability to try this, all of these substances, and also to share that wealth and knowledge with others. Because if, you know, we don't know, if grandma never has an opportunity to try it, we're never going to be able to see how it worked for her body and her condition. And she's never going to give us that feedback. And that's one more data point that's just missing from the information that we need.
Well, I think, thank you. You know, and Tiffany, you're right on. You know, and the other thing too is that I think that there's a level of sophistication that really hasn't been embraced in this industry yet in terms of business economics and business management. So when we look at our pricing, we incorporate things like price line theory. In other words, actionable price points that consumers can respond to. In other words, how do you separate that particular dollar bill from their wallet? But, you know, it's also GM ROI indexing. In other words, for gross margin return on investment, which is a calculation of turn times gross margin. Now, it's very simplistic, but, you know, when I came into this industry, you know, and again, as a neophyte, like I was the grower, you know, the closet grower for many, many years. But it was really interesting to me to see that people were keystoning, in other words, doubling their cost in every facet of the supply chain. And it's like, well, that's just nonsensical to me. In other words, if, you know, would I rather spend, you know, would I rather sell something for $100 at $50 margin, you know, 3 times a month versus something that sells, you know, for $50 at like, you know, 35% margin, but sell it 14 times a month, you know, turn it 14 times a month, you know. And so those are the metrics that we need to be able to look at for long-term sustainability, long-term success. And I am proud of one thing that we do, and I don't think it's unique. In fact, the one thing in coming back to Michigan after many years away, I was so happy to see is how many people practice, for lack of a better term, we call it corporate tithing. But we typically give away about 10% of our inventory to people who just frankly can't afford stuff. And that's something that's really important to us. And frankly, we've done it at our own detriment. You know, I've made people say, why do you think you're going to be successful today? Well, it's like at some point in time, you run out of things to fuck up. Pardon my French. But, you know, but we're there. And maybe I shouldn't swear, I'm sorry. But
you're good.
You know, we're good. Okay, yeah. And so, but it really is about being thoughtful and being able to, I mean, at the end of the day, I still think as an industry, there is a foundation of certitude associated with this. I mean, you know, Rick and Jamie, you guys have been doing this for a really long time, you know, and I think that, you know, as advocates, as evangelists, you know, you really helped lay the foundation for people like me. And you know, and I think that it's important for us newcomers. You know, I still consider myself a newbie because, again, I'm the village idiot on this call, I'm sure. But having said that, you know, I think it's important for us to honor that legacy, that foundation that you all have set up, and that's why we have to educate consumers. We have to lay those foundation to really empower these consumers to make that right decision and make it so it's affordable, so that we not only foster that sense of loyalty, which is imperative to continued and sustained business growth, but more importantly, to really just simply help people. That's it. Give them an option, you know, because there's so much bloody confusion out there. I hate to say it is.
Ultimately, it's good business to be good to people.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, probably, sure. You know?
I think so. I think especially in this world.
The companies try very, very hard to establish brand loyalty to retailers, loyalty to individual marketing brands, loyalty to logos, for crying out loud, right? So the fact is you purchase a logo. You're not necessarily, you don't know whether Kimberly Clark owns that company or whether it's a 3M company. You're loyal to the logo because that's what you're familiar with.
Right.
So,
you know, I mean, and so the funny thing is that, you know, and this is somewhat of a disparaging statement, but I say this about a lot of products that are out there that you find at gas stations. I call them gift wrap turds. Great marketing, great packaging, and so on and so forth, right? But unfortunately, we're kind of the diamond in the plain brown wrapper. We put a lot of thought and care into our products, and then a lot of as do many other companies as well. But Rick, at the end of the day, it is important to be able to connect and build that structural relationship with your core audience. Whether it is that tagline or that logo or whatever that might be. And so it's funny because I think we're so fragmented. Some people are really great at growing and producing and manufacturing certain things. Others are really good at marketing and packaging. And it's like, when you can combine all of those things, that homogeny of all those different aspects of the business, and you still provide exceptional value to the consumer, those are the companies that ultimately win. And you don't always have to be controlled by bean counters.
No, and I agree with that, Pete. But here's the thing, though: if you're speaking to cannabis consumers as if they're blue jeans consumers or if they're potato chip consumers, then you're going to miss the point. Now, you can use marketing skills, marketing theory, game theory. You can use all different ways that you could reach the customer, but you have to speak their language. And what I oftentimes see are the people that are making decisions about how the front end of advertising campaigns are actually reaching people. They're not doing it properly. I see a lot of ads in magazines that look like they're advertising cigarettes. That doesn't attract our people, right? I mean, there's things that work with us, and there's things that really turn us off.
Right.
And some of that is age specific too. But as a consumer base, I think we're oftentimes lumped in with other consumers of regular goods, and we are unique in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's really challenging to whether you're, to your point, if are you marketing to a lifestyle, or are you marketing a particular product based on a particular condition? And there has to be a line of demarcation. The problem is we try to do everything. And that's something that we struggle with. I personally struggle with, in my company. So no, your feedback is well taken. And again, as the neophyte, probably on this call, but having had many years of business experience, it's really an interesting dynamic how to be able to appeal to the deeply ingrained embedded consumer versus the newbies who want to come in. And again, my core demographic are females over 35 and baby boomers. That's who I want to go after. They have more discretionary dollars to spend, and frankly, as we get older, we don't take everything at face value. In other words, a lot of my peers, I'm 56 going on 14, and there's a lot of people out there that are my peers now that wouldn't even touch cannabis. Now they're all curious about it. Now they all want to learn about it, and they want to be empowered again with the right information and the right message. You're right, the message.
One of the things that you mentioned with those particular age groups that you talked about, those are people that respect science. Oftentimes in a younger demographic, we see millennials and people of that age who really are rejecting some of the things we talk about for whatever reason.
Sure.
But when we want to enter science into the conversation, when we want to start talking about flavonoids and terpenes and the actual chemistry of the plant itself and how it's going to interact with our own human biology, you have to have a receptive audience. And the marketing group you just mentioned, I think they're more receptive.
Yeah, and listen, the other thing is we need to get away from THC and CBD, at least from our perspective, in terms of it's really, is it an uplifting product? Is it, for pain relief, whatever it might be? In other words, at my mission in what we're doing, is eventually just to have CBD basically being a line item on the ingredient list. And I'd rather build the brand.
I was going to bring that up too, about the CBD thing kind of exploding out of control in some ways. Not that it doesn't help people, not even like an isolate of CBD does help some people, but it's incomplete in the bigger picture that it kind of got way out of control too quickly from my perspective, but it turned into a real thing.
You go to a video store and you say CBD sold here. You're like,
family video. Yeah. They were those great locations and no longer able to rent out videos. So.
Well, who's renting videos? Right? Well, listen, I get it. It's you have to do what you have to do. I get it. I understand that. But you're right. I mean, that's the thing. It's this. I've had a lot of experience in other industries for many years. This is the first time in my life that I've ever seen a product go from being a niche, unique product, in this case CBD, to a commodity in less than 3 years. It's fascinating to me.
Tiffany, what do you think about that?
I agree. Sorry, I was muted there. I agree that it's been a crazy ride. Having been in the CBD isolate market when it was $30,000 to $50,000 a kilo, and now having friends that would literally pay me to come take it from them and do something else with it because they don't want to continue storing it in their facility, or sell it, for $200 to $300 a kilo. I mean, that's the commodity right there. But I think also that was the plan. I'm not sure that people who were getting involved all knew that was the plan, but you take an agricultural product that's scarce and then all of a sudden you make it not scarce anymore. Supply goes up so much that, demand's never going to catch up. And of course the FDA is standing in the way of a lot of progress on that front by making it very hard for interstate commerce to happen. And I'm sure that's frustrating plenty of people and limiting the amount of research that's being done and providing guidance that is confusing. So my opinions on how CBD has been impacted is that the government has intentionally stood in its way. And the business side of it is caused a lot of unnecessary limitations because the government has first stood in its way forever and now is just standing its way by making no decisions. And that's what I think about that. What do you guys think?
I think the same thing. I also, I think that CBD itself, like in the beginning for the medical, for medical laws in Michigan, it wasn't hemp CBD. It was high, like cannatonic 4, it was cannatonic 7, it's Harlequin, and these other strains that have a substantial amount of other cannabinoids that I thought was more effective too. And the stuff that's being sold at video stores, it's like a hemp CBD product that really doesn't have much of an origin, line to figure out where it's come from in some cases and how it was made.
Yeah, determined not to be reliable in some cases too.
Right. And can we talk as well about, if you're making a plant extract and you're not making an isolate, right? Which it sounds like Peter is making, more live plant extracts. It's not just CBD or THC or CBC or CBG or CBN or no, it's that and 15% of plant proteins and plant sugars and, complex amino acids that the plant is using and plant hormones that you're also getting that with an isolate product, quite frankly, you've intentionally removed and then probably thrown away. Right. And so now you're missing all of those things, and those things could have been important. And because we've had, regulatory bodies that have prevented appropriate levels of research, we don't know the answer to that question. I mean, which one of those plant proteins is the most important, and why is a full spectrum product better than an isolate? We don't know, but we should.
Well, I think we know that we don't have a THC cannabinoid system. We have an endocannabinoid system. There's a lot of different things, so it needs to have that key that matches, that fits all those cannabinoids.
Yeah, for sure. And is it a supplement, right? Is it filling in the holes that your body is not making on its own, since apparently your body does make these things, or at least they're analogs on its own? Or is it, your body doesn't actually need a supplement and now you're ingesting something else and it's completely changing your body's chemistry instead of, filling in the gaps? I mean, there's so much left for us to find out. And I think it's awesome that we're all on this adventure together. I mean, it's going to be another great, 10 to 15 years of learning more.
That becomes one of the issues when you try to dedicate a product for a particular reason. I know we try to do that, but that becomes the issue. Everybody might respond to that same thing differently. You're trying to do that though, Peter, aren't you? You're trying to say this thing should be for pain, whatever. I mean, I'm not saying you can't get there, but that's.
Listen, I mean, so as you all mentioned before, you talk about full spectrum. We talk about cold processing, so we don't, disrupt the origins of the plant. And I'm not a scientist, right? So, but now we're trying to break it down so we can identify all the particular compounds and then recreate them on an isolated basis. Tiffany's right. I mean, we're probably a good 5 years away from having that ultimate outcome where we're able to replicate, not synthetically. I'm talking natural products, but I'm saying be able to replicate the isolates and then recreate those formulas in a bottle. And again, for me, the most important thing and the biggest disappointment I have is that, you know, I originally sold other people's products. You know, I came to Michigan with the rights to Charlotte's Web for 11 states, for example. And, but the problem was every batch was different, you know, and so somebody said, well, gosh, this one batch really worked, you know, this one product worked really well for me, but then I bought it again, it didn't work, and you ultimately lose a customer. And as a distributor, you lose, you know, customers that buy from you, the retail customers, because they, you know, the customer votes with their wallet. So it's really important for us to be able to, you know, the holy grail for us is be able to say that I don't care where you buy it, when you buy it, how much you pay for it, it's going to be that same experience for you regardless. And then we have to think about things like diet and exercise and, you know, all these other variables that affect our life. I mean, the most frustrating thing to me, I used to do a lot of patient meet and greets when I first got back. And, you know, it was kind of like the blind leading the blind, you know, at the beginning. But I would have people come to me and, you know, you would talk to them and they would say, well, hey, I have fibromyalgia, I have rheumatoid arthritis, I have this, that, and the other thing. And, you know, will this CBD or even THC help me? And then you look at them and they're like 75 pounds overweight. And that's not a judgment, right? But I'm just saying is that you have to think about, you know, it's, in other words, it's not.
Oh, yeah, hit the mute while you were talking, but understand the point. There's more to it than the magic use of cannabis.
The silver bullet. Yeah, it's not the silver bullet. We have to be thoughtful about what we put into our bodies, and we have a responsibility to at least educate and inform the consumer. You know, that it is that holistic approach. It really is. And that's why I say CBD, THC, and so on and so forth. They'll ultimately be just ingredients on you know, on a menu, on, you know, on the various products that we have. But we'll formulate it towards lifestyle. That's why I'm fascinated by things like nootropics, for example. They're mostly synthetically derived today, but, you know, we'll get there where they can naturally replicate nootropics as well. Brain health.
Yeah, okay. And through consuming in some ways some of these different types of botanicals that you're creating?
Yeah, I mean, I had a full head of hair about 3 weeks ago. So yeah, I mean, I'm the guinea pig. I'm kidding, of course. But, but the answer is yeah. I mean, we have to, you know, do no harm. Do no harm. You know, I think of, you know, my 83-year-old father. You know, is it something I'm comfortable to you know, to give to him? Right. You know, that's all.
That makes sense. Right on. So what is the and maybe Tiffany, what's like the one of the most interesting, what type of study or what's the most interesting thing being looked at right now that we might be getting some answers on relative near future? I mean, it might be a year or something like that, but what's some big stuff that we're on the verge of a breakthrough on, if anything?
So for me, it's the crowdsourcing. There's an app out of California, and anybody can get the app. It's blanking my mind right now, but I'm sure I could get it to you at some point, then you can share it with others. And this app, you can say what you're smoking or vaping or eating, or I guess inserting, right? And say what effects you were getting. And then that information is, you know, you provide some other info like how old you are and, you know, if you have kids, those kinds of things. So it knows a little bit more about you. And then that information all comes back to a massive database. And then researchers have access to that database so they can make the correlations. And this is happening at the same time with the genotyping project that's coming out of the Colorado University in Boulder, right? So you're being able to say, okay, here's the effects, here's the genotyping, right? Because we were talking about earlier, like indica, sativas, hybrids, but really this specific plant that was in a batch that got used by 300 people in Colorado that were in age groups, you know, 25 to 45, and this was their effects, right? And then do another batch of that and another, and it was the same. Okay, so now we're able to correlate that specific plant to those effects, and then be able to do what Peter's trying to do and say, okay, well, what was in that specific plant, right? Of the thousands of cannabinoids that are coming out of the plant, which ones did it have? Which terpenes did it have? What was the ratios of those terpenes, et cetera? So I feel like that's really exciting just because of how much information it's going to collect, and also that the FDA hasn't stopped the collection of this information, which is pretty nice. I guess they like to make it so you can't collect clinical information pretty regularly. And there's also some research happening in Massachusetts with an approved clinical trial doing a very similar thing where it's taking patients similar to a phase 3 clinical trial that you would do for any pharmaceutical. And they're saying, okay, you're gonna use cannabis. Here's the indication, what you're using it for, specific for pain, right? And, you know, the same way you would if it was a new pain medication coming from a Pfizer or a Novartis or an Eli Lilly, you're saying, you know, what was the impact? You know, were you were you more hungry? Did you have side effects, et cetera? And all that information is being collected in blind fashion, which I think is interesting, because that means some people are getting, I guess, vape products that don't have any cannabinoids in them, which would really suck, honestly, to be vaping a bunch of, I don't know, MCT oil that's tinted, I guess.
You can't have the control for the blind.
Nobody wants to be the control.
Nobody wants to be the control, but the control needs to exist, right, to do a clinical trial the right way. And so they're actually doing it. And I think one of the members of my scientific committee is actually leading that effort. And I think it's the kind of research that we need to be doing. And just today, we had a committee meeting and we talked about across the nation, there's over 100 cannabis research organizations associated with universities and colleges across the nation, you know, dozens of them just in the state of California alone. I mean, we are at a new place in the regulatory environment, and we're getting ready to have all of that information at our fingertips, right? Peter will be able to dial things in better because we'll have clinical data to support what he's trying to do. You know, I get a little scared because I don't want cannabis to be pharma. I mean, I'm not in pharma now for a reason, right? I could still be there. That's where my career was before I made this twist off into this more natural, closer to nature method. But I also acknowledge that, you know, to make it a commodity and make sure it's continuously safe, it may need to be less natural, further from the source.
Tiffany, I got a question for you. Are you really eliminating the natural element just by doing the data? In other words, the data farm, right?
So no. So collecting the data is not what causes the removal from nature. It's what you do with that information after. You know, if someone says, we've looked at the 3,000 cannabinoids that are in the plant, and these 45 are the ones that do stuff, at least we think, because science. And now I'm only going to focus on these 15, and we're going to create products that just mix those 15. Well, the other thousands that, you know, evolution created in plants across the planet, right? Because these plants don't all come from the same place either. I mean, now that's lost. You know, if somebody says a landrace coming out of Mexico, well, it just doesn't get people as high and it doesn't help people with as much pain. And so now we're just going to not grow it anymore.
You know, it won't cut out every other, you know, application. And what they do might be helpful for, you know, many people. And so that'll be good. But no, I'm never going to.
It's like corn, right, guys? In the United States, we grow corn. 80% of it is the same variety, right? That means monocrop, destruction of acreage of farmable land. And quite honestly, a product that's inedible. Right? You can't eat the corn. 80% of the corn that's grown in the United States, we cannot eat. Same thing could happen here. And so sometimes the more science we have, I get this place of fear, because right now my nose can tell me that today I want, you know, a jelly bean, and tomorrow I want a kosher dog. And the next day I want a clementine. And the day after that, I want to go with, you know, a Bubba Kush, because that's what my body says I want. But if in the future, some really amazing guy decides that I can only have kosher dog because it is the most best, because the science said so, and most people like it better, well, then I can't have those other four. And, you know, that's just kind of how it works. And then we're talking about craft cannabis and small varieties, and maybe that's, you know, down the road. But
I think like that might happen, but it doesn't have to displace any other way of using it. I mean, in Michigan, it was important to us. I know other states have decided that the distribution and the commercial systems will be void of people being able to just do this for themselves in their own homes. But here, that's part of the necessary component in order to push forward with the legalization measure. If we couldn't, adults weren't allowed to grow this in their own homes, it wouldn't be done.
Yeah, but I think we all know most people can't grow in their own homes, even though they have the right, they don't physically have the ability to. It takes 4 months. There's a lot of
that's why we have people that grow for them with the caregiver system, or just any adult can grow, so somebody else could fill in that gap. As long as you can do it, you can cover that ground.
Tiffany's point is well taken, though. The consumer public is best served by having the greatest variety of products available to them. We are often concerned that when commercial cannabis comes in, those plants that don't have a high yield per square foot are going to be discarded by commercial facilities because, as I mentioned earlier, those bean counter guys, that's one of the things they like to do is to maximize the square footage for each individual watt that's paid for. So in order for us to protect against that, as Jamie mentioned, there's got to be a lot of other options, a lot of other variables, avenues for product to get to market.
Until recently, the caregivers were able to help supply the market here in Michigan. That meant there was more diversity and more quality in the supply chain. The people who have large investments in this have always wanted to edge that out so that their products would be of the few available for people to buy. And they've been successful with that in a lot of cases. And that does limit the variety of
when you have
on the commercial market.
When you have caregivers in the system, it's a much easier communications method upstream in the supply chain. You can communicate with caregivers directly and say, you know what, we really like this, get us more of that. It's easier for a caregiver to adjust on the fly to change production lines than it would be for a larger commercial entity where things are oftentimes programmed out multiple harvests in advance, and oftentimes product is already spoken for well in advance of its cultivation. So.
I think we all agree with that, limiting the...
Okay. Can I just ask one question, though? I'm dying to know about THCP. What do you know about that, Tiffany?
You're muted again. There you go.
So THCP is new to me, unless you're talking about the biosynthetic THC that comes from a CBD isomerization.
No, I brought it up earlier. It was recently discovered, CBDP, THCP. I don't know a whole lot about it. I was kind of hoping, as Rick did, the THCP is believed to be involved in the psychoactive effect. So what I was saying to you earlier, if we're just looking at a THC percentage, you're automatically, if that's true, excluding, some of the information you might need to determine how much psychoactive material there is in here or whatever. So
I'm going to have to do more research about THCP as an analog in general. But when you consider that it's probably not that much different from the structure of THC or Delta 8 and Delta 9 or CBD, you would expect that you would see it analytically. There would be a peak. And I'm not seeing these peaks, right? Like when I'm running, distillate, not, biosynthetic converted CBD products. That's a different beast all on its own. But when I'm running distillate products coming from, like a high THC or a middling THC plant, you don't see those peaks.
Through the GCMS.
Correct. Or the HPLC. You just don't see them. And chromatography would tell you that you would see it, which, and I'm getting excellent peak separation. I'm getting, peak separations of 3 or 4, which is, FDA level peak separation. So, when you consider that, now you're talking about something that is probably in everything, but in such small quantities that, we cannot detect it, meaning it's in the less than parts per billion, right? Amounts when we're looking at these samples. And, if it's in everything, then, it's in your CBD product, right? It's in your THC products. It's in your combination products. And, for me, the degradation that happens when things are heated also creates dozens of other products, right? And we know from, the work that people are doing on the synthetic side and with biosimilars that is huge as well, right? I mean, these, if you, the hydrolysis of the THC, so you're adding 2 additional hydrogens. That's all you need to do. It makes the psychoactive properties of it like exceptionally higher. right? So much so that it may be an unpleasant experience for the average user, right? And so when I think about, THCP, is it one additional hydrogen and now it's getting you higher than you would expect? And does it happen naturally? Because, hydrolysis does happen naturally. If you get a little pressure and you're exposed to water, that's all it takes. And, plants are exposed to water and pressure often. So anyway, I just, from a science standpoint, obviously I need to do more research about it itself.
It was an Italian study. I just sent it to you so you can review it.
You're so kind. Thank you.
And I'm interested in more about it too. So you can check that over and then use layman terms to describe to me what it means.
And that's one of the advantages of chemistry with working symbiotically with the natural world, because if we can find something, even if it appears in such small amounts that it might not necessarily be appreciable by the human body, but it seems to have interesting properties, we can synthesize it, create larger doses for it, and then experiment with what that might mean. Oftentimes when we hear about medicines coming from the rainforest, that's exactly the situation. We find small little molecules that we didn't know existed, and they actually have huge impact on human life. It's one of the reasons why we should never discard those landrace strains, because we never know what's going to be found in the future when our chemical analysis is much more advanced. There may be something there that does cure cancer, that does kick ass, or does make life on Mars possible. The possibilities are endless with science, which is why we should never eliminate any option.
Yes, and keep them in the seed bank.
Right.
Lots of them, for sure. I agree.
And get our kids involved in that kind of scientific analysis, because the next generation is going to be super huge and super important in our evolution of this plant knowledge.
Pete, have you been confronted with the THCP or CBDP conversation and any information worthy of sharing based on that?
I'm sorry, was that a question for me?
Yeah, it was, because you're so working with this stuff all the time. I'm just wondering if you've come across this.
No. I have nothing I could offer of value at this time.
Okay.
No. Yeah.
And I want to say, like, the first time we heard about it was probably January of this year, so it's brand new.
Yeah,
Sure.
it was earlier this year.
So interesting, and that maybe there's more of those out there, and maybe they do have something to give us a bigger picture. But I know the Delta 8 has become really popular for a lot of people. Delta 8 products.
Right. It's illegal in several. It's illegal in several states. Is it legal here now? I keep reading differing.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's in places like in non-cannabis states, right?
So you get busted, it's legal.
Yeah.
I was just thinking the same thing. I was just thinking, until the DEA decides that they want to make an enforcement action against you because you're processing something that, regardless of how much Delta 8 is present, has more than the legal limit of Delta 9, because that's just how the science works right now. Actually, I wrote a paper on that earlier this summer and did a submission to the DEA through the National Cannabis Industry Association, saying, hey, it's kind of confusing when you say these things are legal or illegal.
Right. It's really hard to build a business, right, off of a loophole. So I spend a lot of time in Georgia. I have a place in the Atlanta area, and also spend a lot of time in Kentucky and Tennessee. And it's really interesting, because when you look at, like, CBD is passé now, but you go to these various head shops or vape stores, you see nothing but Delta 8. And and again, I talk to people there and they say, well, what's the legality of this? And they're like, well, we don't know. It's basically a loophole. It just hasn't been addressed by the DEA. And I'm like, well, as a business person, I can't build a business off of that, but I'm certainly intrigued by it from a medicinal and therapeutic use perspective.
I remember that I got, maybe Rick, maybe you remember too, we got like some Delta 8 vapes. Was that? Yeah.
I remember in a High Times Cannabis Cup judges kit, I received some Delta 8 products to be able to evaluate.
Right. And it would be similar to trying to evaluate like a CBD product in a way. I mean, I'm not sure, like it doesn't necessarily give you the same type of punch or feel that you would get from a Delta 9 scenario, or what was the response?
Well, that was my experience. Is that it was much more like a CBD experience, the Delta 8. I didn't feel it in my head. I didn't feel it in an appreciable way from an intoxicant standpoint. I did afterwards feel that sense of comfort, that sense of
relief or
homeostasis, if we want to get technical about it, within my body, which I sometimes experience when I have a dose of high CBD, either through a dab rig or through vaporizing.
Nice.
I would say with all of the work I've been doing with people on the Delta 8 side, that because you can't actually get pure Delta 8 at this point, it's always got THC in it, that my experience has been that it just seems like low quality distillate product with a very nice color, right? Because usually you can get it in either like a super clear, crystal clear, or like a light pinkish hue. And, you know, but the rest, I find it to be very interesting that people are marketing it as a Delta 9 replacement product that's more legal, while at the same time, not discussing any of the other things that we've discussed here about the ensemble effect or any of those kinds of things, right? So, here you are again with an isolate product, and you're leaving so much of the plants on the table. So yeah. By the way, after reading the Italian article, which is nicely translated into English, I don't know if they originally wrote it in English on Google, by the way. The only difference is a single pair of electrons between THC Delta 9 and THC Delta 9P. So it's just the inversion of the ester link there.
Would it be left out or included in a regular assessment of THC composition?
It probably would be the same, because it will. You would have to be looking for. You'd have to have a lot of additional separation right at the peak for Delta 9. You'd have to let that time be extended. On GCMS, though, you would probably not see it at all, because it's going to have the same mass, because it is an identical isomer. Yeah, it's kind of goes back to what I was saying before, just hydrolysis. The addition of two hydrogens makes THC incredibly potent as far as the drunkenness, right? The lack of motor function issues that can come from consuming too much. And it would appear that, in this case, it has the same number of hydrogens, but it has the bonds are going a different direction.
You just pique some curiosity, and instead of like losing some function because of maybe getting, too tired or something like that from using cannabis, are you actually familiar with a study that says like just using cannabis will affect that?
So this was hydrolyzed. So this is a synthetic THC product where they take Delta 9 THC and then they hydrogenate that by adding 2 additional hydrogens. So it makes a completely different compound that is.
And it does put people down, or does?
And
really
it does.
okay.
It's very tranquilizing, and it makes motor function very, very difficult. And there are a number of biosimilars that impact our bodies in similar ways, especially those that bind to our opiate receptors. And hopefully soon there will be some more research coming out about that, because they're trying now to use cannabis and cannabis analogs, right? So products that have been made in the lab, not made in the plant, to make these changes to people's bodies in this way. And but that might actually end up being good, because there are plenty of people who are addicted to opiates in this country, and they will die.
Well, I used cannabis to get off of a opiate.
There you go. And it does work, right? I think in Colorado, they said they have a 30% reduction in opiate usage.
There's a clinic in, I don't know much about it lately, but there's a clinic in California that uses cannabis as an exit therapy for addicts.
Yeah.
So
Tiffany, is that hydrolyzed cannabis you mentioned? Is that commercially available? Is that marketed under a particular name?
It's clinically available, but I don't know that you could buy it legally. It's the synthetic cannabinoids are Schedule 1 by the DEA, so you'd have to have special dispensation from them and the FDA to use it.
But you're not speaking of any of the current prescribed, like Dronabinol. You're not speaking of dialects. Okay.
No. Yeah. Right. So those are all just synthetic Delta 9 THC and CBD products.
So Peter, is within your product line or your vision, is the help to get people off of other substances?
Yeah, we actually came out with a product a couple years ago called Entourage Effects, and what we did is we took kratom extract and we blended that with CBD in a 2-to-1 ratio. So CBD 2 part CBD, 1 part, I can't remember the actual alkaloid, but Mitragina speciosa is the plant name. So we know a lot of people have been using kratom, for example, to get high, and there's certainly some controversy surrounding kratom in general. But we took the actual alkaloid and we combined that, and then a gentleman took it over to an opiate crisis conference in Nashville. And there was a little bit of, no pun intended, a little bit of a buzz surrounding it. And then we got a cease and desist letter from the FDA. So yeah, but again, that's again, multiple phases in our efforts, but yeah, we're absolutely, there are no barriers that we won't be willing to knock down to examine how we can really help people achieve this better quality of life. And, and certainly addiction and addiction therapy is certainly on that schedule as well.
One of the things people struggle with is understanding when you have a 2-to-1 CBD THC ratio. Perhaps, let me make sure I understand that our audience is understanding this correctly. All of your cannabinoid receptors would accept THC molecules or CBD molecules, so that when you're giving them two. Okay, Tiffany, go ahead and explain, because I see you're.
Yeah. So like right now, I'm aware of 6, and so when you say all of, so if one connects to a CBD, the one next to it maybe can't connect to CBD because it's going to pull it in a certain way. So they're keyed, and they there's antagonists that are associated with that too. So maybe you get a little bit of your CBG connected in one, and that's going to activate the ones next to it. So now you can get your THC, or maybe even your limonene is going to come in and antagonize one, and it's going to pull it one direction and the other. And then now you get your THC and your CBD molecule in there at the same time. So I kind of made the sideways face because I know there's a lot of research out there that implies that we have not an abundance of these receptors. And so, but they're everywhere. They're in all of our organs, or parts, it's like our skin, but also part of our skin and part of our digestive system, but also there's a reason it's called the endocannabinoid system. It's just like our circulatory system, right? It's in our entire body. And when I think about that, I don't believe, because there's some research to indicate that the sections of our body all respond to these chemicals in the same way. So maybe your colon doesn't care too much for THC and it bind with it very well, but your nasal cavities do for whatever reason, right? So I'm sorry I made that face in your general direction. It's because I don't think we know enough to make the generalization, and I think that there definitely are going to be places where only one can fit.
The goal was to get us talking about the science, and that's exactly what we did. So yay!
and we've now learned that people's colon have a very shitty attitude.
I'll tell you, I had somebody tell me the other day that suppositories with cannabinoids just don't work. And I was like, because you think that our colon doesn't have an endocannabinoid receptor in it? Whatever do you mean? And he really was trying to explain it. I was like, I'm pretty sure no one would be shoving cannabinoids up their butts if they didn't work.
There's all those blood vessels there that absorbs it pretty readily, right? That's one of the reasons why that's a spot.
And it's a single pass. It doesn't have to go through your liver. It doesn't have to be absorbed by your stomach. Right. So hey.
There's more bioavailability too, going through the rectum.
Yeah, some good research coming out of the Netherlands that says it's compared to your lungs, you get about 80% of what you put there, and your lungs there's about 30%, right? So smaller dosing, which is important when we're trying to give people access, right? Don't need as much. It can be cheaper, maybe, probably not.
Yeah, we talk about science, but one of the things that we have a wealth of is individual success stories with cannabis and cannabis medicines. And when we've tried to break it down into the definable and the measurable, sometimes the immeasurable is even more significant in my mind, and those are the personal stories of healing that we hear from individuals. And sometimes we hear the stories and then we investigate the science behind it to learn why that worked, and that's how we make discoveries. So you know, I'm so enthused whenever we hear people tell their stories of how cannabis actually brought them back from the brink. It's amazing.
Hey, Peter, anything you want to make sure that we get in on this conversation?
Oh, no. It's truly been my pleasure. I've learned, and I think I want to become Tiffany's best friend. So yeah.
Well, I was inspired to invite her on the show after a short conversation today.
He knows about the colon, Tiffany. That's, you know, it's a big attribute.
We'll start from the colon and then learn about everything else from there.
No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Dad joke. Yeah, it was good.
Poor Colin's back there hoping everybody's
talking about me.
A lot of
Wasn't
fun.
even making that connection, even in the least. For a while, I accidentally or mistakenly referred to Colin as Colin.
No, it was intentional. I'm
For
pretty
months, it was, yeah.
And Jim just had to leave us. He mentioned he was going to leave at 5:30. I wanted to get him in for a second, but he's gone. So.
Yeah.
He's a regular on the show, so he'll be back next week to let us know what he thinks about stuff. Tiffany, is there anything on this that we're leaving out or that you feel you'd like to include in this conversation?
You know, I had a thought earlier in the show when we were talking about like, why does indica sativa hybrid matter? And to me at this point, the only reason it matters is, can you grow it? Right? You know, generally sativa characterized plants you can't grow at home.
Or it takes more resources and
it takes
more
more
time.
resources, it takes more space. You can't grow them in, you know, a tiny grow tent. You know, the similar issue happens in an indoor grow. And I think that broadly speaking, you know, if you talk about California and these vast outdoor grows and they're growing these beautiful sativa plants and letting the plants finish because they can have 11 to 13 weeks to flower, is a bit different than what a person can do in their closet when they're already struggling, you know, to get a single plant harvested once every 4 months, right? So for me, you know, the hybrids that have been designed to grow in closets, okay, and under stairs and in backpacks hidden behind your bed, right? Like those plants have value, and it may have nothing to do with the medicinal value of the individual strain. It has value because I have access yet again. Mm-hmm. And I feel like sometimes when we start talking about the chemical properties of the plant, we miss out on, you know, is it a plant that you can sit it and forget it? Or is it need to be babied its entire life to be successful? I mean, those are important things, especially for a new consumer. You know, I can remember my very first plant died, horrible, horrible death. I heated it too much inside of its tiny enclosure. And if it would have been a more robust plant that was designed to grow in a tiny enclosure, it probably would have lived, right? And I might have ended up in prison instead of staying in pharmaceuticals, right? Because if it would have been a more successful crop, right? I mean, that's how these things go. And I think that sometimes we miss out on those things. I think we lose the details of how individuals in our culture with cannabis have interacted. I mean, these are, you know, imported from overseas or other countries or grown in closets and in, you know, attics. And we miss that sometimes if we start talking only about, you know, the difference between the ensemble and entourage, which one is it? And, you know, potency levels or microdosing. We miss that, you know, the only reason we still have cannabis today is because we had a bunch of people, many of whom are in prison, that spent the last 100 years defying the law to keep us ahead of the game.
That's true. There's a long history leading up to where we are now.
Still breaking federal law on a daily basis, most of us,
right?
So, you know, Tiffany, one thing I'm kind of reminded of, and I wanted to get in, I guess, is you brought up a phenomena of some plants in Colorado, I think it was, in which heavy metals were showing up, and you found out that particular type of plant was just more adept at absorbing all that stuff and holding it. Now, would that be the kind of stuff we go look for when, like, trying to figure out what best to use for like soil remediation and things like that, so you can find plants that are better at that than others?
Yeah, for sure. And actually in, I believe it's the Colorado School of Mines who actually picked it up and is now using these plants or a phenotype of this specific strain of plant that has probably less THC in it to clean up Superfund sites, right? Like these plants can do so much. And sometimes it boggles my mind, but yes, for sure. I definitely did see a plant that, I mean, we know that they're bioaccumulators. We know that they are good at this, and that, you know, that's why they're a weed and can live in many places, is because they can take nutrients in many different ways. But being able to isolate that genetics and then use it for, you know, cleaning up uranium is kind of awesome, in my opinion.
Rick would use it to clean up Uranus.
when there's no toilet paper available, I mean, we'll use it in that respect.
Anyway, that's, sorry, I go there when you said uranium. I apologize. But
which is a big deal on Native American reservations in New Mexico, Colorado, Arizona, and Utah, right? Because we did all of this uranium mining there, and giving them a method to produce a food and a fuel and a medicine while also cleaning up after the mining that came before them and ruined their land.
Tiffany,
sorry. Go ahead, Rick.
Once those plants have accumulated the uranium or the heavy metals from those particular sites, how useful are they at that point?
That was my question. Yeah, you still use them for industrial purposes or something like that?
So it's in the parts per billion level. And as far as I'm concerned, you probably would not want to eat them, but for using them for other things, such as building materials,
fiber,
right? Yeah, maybe not for clothing, but you can make them into wood substitutes. They make them into concrete substitutes now. And so then now they're in concrete, right? Now, even if they were radioactive, they're no longer radioactive. You've cleaned up the Superfund site, and you've pulled that mineral out of the soil where it's no longer wanted. You've taken the salts out and you've put it in something that's long standing, that hopefully will not be doing any leaching, right? Because it's sealed in a building material. And, you know, so that's good for everyone. But certainly you should be smoking them. I don't recommend people smoking things they've used to clean up Superfund sites. Probably it also has less.
Oh, remember science. You have to do the experiment to determine that. You know?
Yeah, and
maybe there's some superpowers that could be achieved from.
Yeah, we could all have Spider-Man like.
That's how the zombie apocalypse starts. I'm pretty sure. Yes.
You turn into the R&J over there behind up.
Oh,
well, they're doing tests now in Colorado, which I guess goes into law in January, where now you have to do inhalant tests, right? So on any smoking products. So puff tests to make sure that there are no carcinogens, I guess, coming out in the smoke.
And the difference, there's clearly they used to test the distillate only before it went into the cartridge. They were determining that there were some problems after it was put into the cartridge. So now there's a secondary test to determine if adding it to the cartridge created an additional problem.
Yes, and also if heating it, regardless, whether it's in a cartridge or on a dab rig, etc., is going to cause those issues as well. So, you know, there's science, and the regulators are responding to, you know, the more we know about these hyperaccumulators. I know that means try using purified water is probably better than, you know, canal water, probably.
Sure. So they're using it in Japan, I think, successfully with the radiation and the
Fukushima
that they had for Fukushima.
Phytoremediation, right? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So I wanted to get in some of the specifics that we talked about on the MORE Act a little bit before we ended the show, and you guys are welcome, I'm sure, very familiar with that and might have some opinions on that as well. Welcome to be part of this conversation, but we got a little bit deeper into it. At the beginning of the show, we talked about whether or not we thought that some of the rumors of pressure being put on the Senate to try to pass it to help affect the elections in Georgia, you know, had much merit. I have a hard time seeing it being called up in the Senate, you know, this year, and I don't think that those rumors are going to amount to much, but it itself would allow for a lot of the research or more of the research and things like that we need to do. Isn't that correct? I mean, there are some problems with it in its form, but again, it's not going to pass. And we talked about this on the other show, and those had to do with prohibiting some people from participation because of their past record, you know, might have had illegal issues with cannabis. And that would prohibit them from doing it. And there's just like a really high federal tax associated with it that causes its own set of problems, between like 5 and 8%.
I feel like it's a similar tax to most other commodities.
It may be, but that doesn't
I mean,
necessarily.
it's 20% of the tax on steel, for instance.
Right.
Right. So it's less.
That
less
doesn't,
than
but
steel
steel's a
tax.
completely different thing than cannabis is, and
Oh,
there's,
yeah,
there's not a relationship between former practices on different things and what we should be doing with cannabis now, and the higher tax causes problems, whether or not they want to base it on other things that have already been. I can understand why they do that, but there again, we talk about those who aren't aware of cannabis and how it works, and people aren't going to, like, because steel prices get too high, figure out some other way to underground, create steel, and or whatever.
Yeah, they go to carbon nanotube fiberglass.
Oh, you might have the answer. There you go.
Sorry, I just.
Yeah, 3D printers take care of all that in the future. That's another good subject for circumventing some of that stuff in the future. But what do you think about the more? Any opinions on the MORE Act, Peter?
Nothing of substance. No. I'm concerned. My greatest concern as we barrel towards this whole federal legalization is that we don't lose sight of the need to do the necessary research. I'm not 100% convinced that if we get the Senate on board, they're going to look at it from anything other than the perspective of monetary generation, right? Generation of taxable revenues.
That's why we kind of went along with hemp at one point.
Yeah,
those things don't exist for hemp for cannabis right now.
I'm sorry?
I'm saying those same conditions do not exist for cannabis, that for the same reasons that he supported the hemp.
Yeah. It's just, obviously Kentucky needed to, they offset the lost revenues in tobacco, right? So, my greatest concern is that we still have incentive and motivation to truly understand the potential of this plant from a medicinal and therapeutic use perspective. That's really it. Do I think, the Senate's a joke right now, as far as I'm concerned. We don't want to get me involved in the political discussion.
Well, what we're saying is, like, the only reason that they would, or what the rumors are, the only reason they would do it is because they believe that it would help counteract the momentum that maybe the Democrats have in the Georgia race, which would also.
No. I'm down in Georgia, man. And I've spoken to several of those legislators, senators there and legislators, and they can't even get out of their own way. Technically, Georgia is a cannabis state. They have over 25,000 cardholders now.
Isn't it a very limited program, like oil and?
There is no program. That's the point.
Right. Okay.
Basically, it's basically permissible defense. In other words, if I get pulled over and they find cannabis and I have that card, then then it's up to the discretion of the judge to let me go.
Well, which one?
But how you got it is on your own, right? Yes. How you acquired it is up to you.
Yeah. There's no official means in which to legally obtain.
Yeah, they just allowed the regulatory authority just allowed applications to get legal means to cultivate and process and sell in Georgia, like this week. Right.
Yeah,
so that's for next year, though, right? These are applications that are happening now. So it's not anytime soon.
It took them 14 months to get there.
It's crazy how long it takes, right?
Yeah.
It's nice. Good data.
Yeah.
Nope. And of course, in Michigan, we first started our program in 2008 in exactly the same way. Our card represented an opportunity for us to get out of jail free, but without a retail distribution set, you were basically set to either have a caregiver yourself or to provide for yourself. Now we've evolved past that. We still can't forget those roots of where we came from, and also can't forget the people who very successfully treat their ailments and illnesses in that way, and therefore we have to shepherd the system to make sure those parameters never disappear. They can't take away our caregiver rights. We see all across the United States many different programs not including home grow or home cultivation. New York, New Jersey are proposing cannabis regulations that don't allow the opportunity for people to control their own medicine. You would be literally at the mercy of the commercial system. You would not be able to grow something that worked for yourself. If you saw something that you thought might be good to try, you could not if it wasn't available to you. Home cultivation gives you more options for your own benefit and health.
In Washington, D.C., that's what it was based on. That's what it started with. There's no commercial element to it. People could just grow it for themselves if they wanted to. I like that way to get started, and then bring on a commercial component, on top of that establishment. But
yeah, buying hats so I can get some weed was like the coolest thing I ever did in my life. know?
We had that.
I mean,
buy
that's
this
how it
pack, buy
was,
this
right?
pack
You
of
can't-
papers for
you-
$50 and I'll give you a quarter.
Yeah, I know. Like you can't sell weed, but I will give you a quarter if you buy this really cheap hat for $50. No problems.
We are a very creative species, human beings are, and we
Yes,
will.
yes, we are.
The rat will get the cheese, no matter how difficult you make the maze.
For sure. I feel like the MORE Act is more a testament to where we are. Last year, we didn't get a vote. Okay?
True.
The year before, it didn't make it out of committee. Right? This year, it made it out of committee, got a vote, and was passed. Now, it may not make it any further, and there may be some amendments that I know Jamie expressed earlier today that, you know, really are not so great in many people's eyes. But it got out of committee and got it voted in, right? Like this hasn't happened in 100 years for a reason. It's kind of important. From a policy standpoint, you know, I know there's lots of people who are like legalize, 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 and don't get me wrong, I am too. We are not ready as an industry for federal regulation, in my opinion.
You know, and I guess.
Well, you know, sorry if I, you know,
No, go
I
ahead.
love what Tiffany just said too, you know, and this is what I've been saying, and you could certainly disagree, but I'm of the position, you know, be careful what you ask for. In other words, you know, it's inevitable that the quote unquote the big boys are going to come in. Well, and so if we have federal legalization without any kind of protective caveats implemented, you know, the biggest challenge we're going to have is, and what happens if the big boys don't go to places like, for example, Thailand, the first Southeastern Asian country to actually legalize a medical marijuana program specifically for export. So if you're talking about these, you know, and a friend of mine is very, you know, my former business partner owns the largest sunflower farm in the United States. He works closely with the guy who's on the board of the largest cannabis grow in Colombia. Their whole business model is predicated upon exportation. Mm-hmm. So when they bring it into the United States, and let's say, you know, and I don't know what the numbers are, you know, I'm not a commercial grower, but I hear that, you know, with all things with optimal growing environments, you know, you're talking about still $300 production per pound in an indoor environment in that general range. Mm-hmm. And, you know, and then you look at the financials, because they're a publicly traded company, they're on the Canadian Stock Exchange, the company out of Colombia, whose name fails me, but their cost of production is $78 per pound. So you know,
because energy is cheap in Colombia.
Well,
and labor is cheap.
The sun is cheap, right? You know, and the environment, you know, I mean, they have an optimal growing environment. They're, you know, equatorial or at the equator. So, you know, so I tend to be a little bit more cautious about these things because I want to understand what protections are in place for people like me, you know, everybody on this call, and probably everybody listening, and everybody who don't even know, you know, we exist. So we need to be very sensitive and mindful of these things, you know, because I don't, you know, it's folly to me how many people are spending billions upon billions of dollars in investing in these big, you know, gigantic cannabis cultivations. It's like, well, what happens when the big boys import product from elsewhere? You know, and we can talk, and so we have to reposition the industry almost entirely upon, like, you know, microbreweries, craft, you know. And that unto itself then lends itself to huge marketing challenges, you know, for people to say, well, why am I going to spend a 40% premium? And some people won't even bat an eye. But the mass public, yeah, I mean, there are a lot of things that we probably haven't thought through because we're so excited about the legalization and the elimination of a 100-year prohibition. But I still think we need to pause and really study the impact of what that truly means from not only an economic perspective, from a research perspective, and really from an educational perspective to the mass consumer. You know, the available market then becomes 330 million people. How do we evangelize the right message to them? I mean, these are challenges that we, you know, they're not unique, but
well, and acknowledge that most of them already have access.
Yeah, I mean,
right? More than half.
The black market, the unregulated market is parallel, pervasive, and overpowering. And traditional market forces, strategy doesn't necessarily apply in a state where whenever you want, if cannabis at a distribution center is too high, you can just walk down the street, right? So you can't force people to pay a higher price just because federal taxes, because they will just opt to use a different sourcing. and then your federal taxes don't get collected because people use the alternative market. So we have a thin line that we can walk here in the United States of America between pricing cannabis to the point where people are no longer going to purchase it, and also doing everything we can to make sure that regulatorily and from a safety perspective that we're respecting everyone's needs.
Hey, we're gonna wind down. Oh, Russ Chambers, everybody.
Hey, Russ.
What on, guys?
We're gonna wind down, but I'm gonna show people the store that's gonna be open in about a week here.
Come on in.
Yeah, we're really looking forward. I'm on location in Lansing.
It's like an episode of Law and Order. We're following
So
around.
check it out. So you come in like the retail area where the paraphernalia and stuff like that and the shirts and stuff are going to be. You get a live shot of the grow that's in the back part of this building, which is kind of cool. There's a little informational kiosk there, and like all the glass work will be on these display stands in there and stuff like that. And then the THC products and point of sale and the bud tenders and everybody will be working these stations. Here, it's hard to like show it, you know, from this way, but this is a very cool, brand new place that's ready to start humming. There's a crew here already working, getting inventory ready, and we're scheduled for a week from today.
Congratulations! It's a
exciting
retail location.
Awesome.
Will there be a COVID party?
Yeah. We are not encouraging a big gathering for this. We're not going to do a big grand opening. We're going to have some extra little things going on throughout the month or 6 weeks or so, just to help point out that this is what's happening for our promotional stuff. But no, we're not going to do the everybody come in today at a grand opening thing and try to hold that together under these circumstances. Some places around here have done that. One of the places that you were formerly looking at employment did that. And then we didn't like it and we judged them for it. So but no, we're not going to do that here. We're going to have a food truck. We're going to have, I mean, maybe a couple times we're going to have a few vendors. It's going to be all small things that we can keep under control, but nonetheless looking very, very much forward to it. In fact, we celebrated a year in October in East Tawas, and we had planned a big celebration for that for a long time, but under the circumstances, we did something similar, just broke it up throughout the month in small little things to point out. So it was good. Anyway, I think that's pretty much it for today. I mean, I really appreciated this conversation. There's a lot of really good information, and some things I had some questions to, and some things I want to follow up on later on. So Peter, we'll definitely have you back on and see what's going on in the future and get your input on some other stuff. And Tiffany,
thank you for having me.
Oh, no problem, man.
So glad to meet all of you today.
Really appreciate it. Welcome to Michigan.
Thank you.
And
this is awesome.
Yeah, good. I'm glad. And you got people with you here is a good sample, a good representation of the activists in Michigan and people who have done a lot of the work here. So
I'll be sure not to smoke any psycho or radioactive cannabis so that my screen doesn't do the, yeah,
maybe that's it.
Those damn isotopes. Yeah.
You have a psychedelic aura. That's all it is, just around you.
Yeah, that must be it. Yeah. Thank you.
No problem. So anybody else need to leave us with some words before we finally shut this down?
Tomorrow on 420 Post, broadcasting at 1 p.m. on Facebook, we will be interviewing Director Andrew Brisboe for the Marijuana Regulatory Agency. So be sure to tune in to 420 Post tomorrow for that.
That's a good one. A lot of stuff going on. A lot of good questions for him. I'm sure, and of course, Planet Green Trees Thursday night at 8 o'clock with the host, Attorney Michael Comorn. And we're opening in a week, as I've already said, in Lansing. Colin, you got anything?
Decriminalize Nature Detroit and Decriminalize Nature Michigan on Facebook and Instagram. Decriminalize Nature Detroit just put out their website yesterday.
And more cities are going to go, like similar to Ann Arbor. They're going to work on, and for a little bit of history, in Michigan, 5 individual cities first went approving medical marijuana before it was a statewide effort where some national interest came in and helped us out with that. So hoping that there's a similar pattern here. Same thing for legalization. We did like 20 or so cities first before going statewide. Deb, you got anything?
Just a little slightly off topic. I just saw the Supreme Court turn down Trump's bid to not certify the Pennsylvania election. So kind of an indication he's headed up that Supreme Court, and he still couldn't get them to see this his way. So
a lot of the judges he appointed, even in the lower courts, he refused his lack of evidence too. I mean, you have to.
But I think he thought that this last installation on the Supreme Court was gonna help him in this endeavor, and thank goodness, even they could not help him. So that's all I have. Slightly off topic.
No, I appreciate you mentioning that, and I appreciate hearing it.
Still good to know, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and we'll see you next week if the Jamie and Rick superheroes with the incredible bulges makes a return.
They might be back in a slightly different form because I do have more than one image.
Nice.
But
yeah, we were put in this magazine
back.
And made fun of a few times over. So there's a couple different
yes, it happened more than once.
We've been lampooned several times. Right.
Just normalizing it, Jamie. That's all. Just normalizing it. That's it.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. And we'll see everybody next week.
Great show.
Yes, Cabbage Cafe. See you guys.